already done in the relations unit. And you've seen it already, but now we're really going to look at the details of all the parts of it, add a few more things as well. For example, here's a joke. What does M stand for?
Slow.
Slow. And that guy's skiing and doesn't know which way to go. Which one would be scariest?
Undefined.
Undefined one would be a cliff, yes. Okay. So, we start off with a little review. When you break your graph paper up, you break it into 4 quadrants. And we call these quadrants, starting in the top right-hand corner, quadrant 1, then go counterclockwise, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. And when you label a point, like if I picked this point here, you always label your x value first. So I went 3 to the left, that would be -3, and 2 up, that would be +2. So does it make sense that everything in quadrant 2, the x value would be less than 0, and the y value would be bigger than 0? So that's what this is, just reviewing your 4 quadrants. Not too bad. How to label points. So, take some time. I will give you a 30-second head start to label A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so what you can do, for example, you can go to 3, 5, and just put an A, 3, 5, like that. Oh, yeah, and you can check, did you get the points in the right spots? Did I get the points in the right spots? Awesome. And the first concept that we do that's new is actually related to a unit you've already done, and a unit you've done in middle school and grade 9 as well. Now, we want to find the distance between the point 2, 6. Oh, this one's a little bit too easy, but we're going to get some harder ones. 2, 6 and 2, 2. So if I labeled 2, 2, and 2, 4, 6, I labeled 2, 6. What is the distance between those two? 4. Okay. That is really, really easy.
Wouldn't that be up and down?
Oh yes, thank you. It would have been really easy if I wouldn't have made a mistake. But it's still 4. 2, 2 and 2, 6, thank you so much, is 4. And what about the length between these two? Can you just count it?
8.
They're 8. Perfect. But what if they're not in a straight line? So if you found the distance between -3, 5, so we're going to label that point -3, 5, and 2, -4, finding the distance between 2 points is related to trigonometry. Why? Because you can easily make a right-angled triangle between those 2 points. And what we're trying to find in that right-angled triangle is how long the hypotenuse is. But it's really easy to figure out. The horizontal length, you can just count that. It's going to be 5. The vertical length, we can count that 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And then you can do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 81 plus 25 equals c squared. So c squared equals 106. And c would equal the square root of 106. That was fast. And then you'd have to also check with your radical. Can you simplify that? Can 106 be divided by 4? Can it be divided by 9? Can it be divided by 16? 25. If not, then we would be done. If it could be, which unfortunately it can, then you would have to write it as a mixed radical. So we have now a new concept, which is finding the distance between 2 points, which is really just a bunch of old concepts put together. That you know how to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You know how to simplify radicals. So all of those things would come back in this question as well. For the second one, what are the 2 points you want to find?
So you just leave it as square root of
Yeah, you would just leave it as square root of 106. Sometimes if you wanted to actually figure that out, you could change it to a decimal, it'd be 10 point something. But you could just leave it as the square root of 106. Okay, try the second one on your own. Between -2, -3.
Yeah, that one's not on our.
That's not on yours?
Question there, but we don't have a graph.
Oh, you don't have the graph. Oh, the graph got moved over. Should we just skip it then?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So this is how mathematicians make a formula. There's a formula for distance. It's on your formula sheet. And it looks like this. Well, often it actually uses the word d. X2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. It looks very complicated as far as formulas go. Is that like the longest formula you've ever had up till now? Probably. So it looks complicated, however, the idea isn't that complicated. Okay? If we go back to the last example, once you had your 2 points, right, you counted how much this was to be 5, and you counted how much this was to be 9. Can you see that this 5, which is my distance between my x coordinate, I could have found that by taking 2 and subtracting -3. Because if you want to find the distance between 2 numbers, you need to subtract. And I could have found this 9 by taking 5 and subtracting -4. Would you agree on that? So what we have in the formula is they say if you have 2 points, we will call our first point x with a little 1 and y with a little 1. And that's just saying that's your first x coordinate, that's your first y coordinate. And then we take our second point and say that's x with a little 2 and y with a little 2. Does it make sense that the vertical distance here is just this value minus this value? I mean, if this was 6 and this was 2, this distance would be 6 minus 2. And the x distance, or the horizontal distance, would just be this value minus this value. And so if we wanted to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, well, now the a is x2 minus x1, and it gets squared. The b is y2 minus y1, and it would get squared. And then that would equal c squared. And if you wanted to find c, you'd have to square root both sides. And so we get what looks like a complicated formula, but it's just a squared plus b squared equals c squared, using the exact coordinates of the point. So if you ever forget your distance formula, because it is, like sometimes you might need to find the distance and you're like, oh, I don't remember where all the numbers go because it's a long formula, you still can just draw a triangle and do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But what's nice about the formula is we can use it to solve questions even quicker. So here we have our distance formula. And our first question here says, find the distance between -3, 7 and -1, -11. So the first thing I find helpful is if you're going to use the formula, write out the formula as it is on your formula sheet. And then choose one of them to be your first point and one of them to be your second point. And it actually doesn't matter which is your first point and which is your second point. Most students will pick the first one, and above that I want you to write x1, y1, because that's your first point. And above the second point, I want you to write x2, y2. And the reason we do that is so that when we go to our formula, we plug in things in the right spot. What am I going to plug in for x2? -1. Minus, what am I going to plug in for x1? -3. Squared plus bracket y2, -11 minus y1, 7. And notice when I plug in negative numbers, I like to add brackets just to hold the negative in place. A little bit of mental math here, order of operations. We do inside the brackets first. What is -1 minus -3?
-2. Oh no, wait, -1 minus
-1 minus a -3 would be
positive.
+2. So that would be +2 squared plus. And -11 minus 7 will be -18 squared. Here, you might need your calculator for some of these. Hopefully you can do 2 squared and get 4 in your head. 18 squared is what, 324? Want to check that?
Yeah, it is.
It is? Okay. And so then our distance is the square root of 328. And can you divide 328 by 4? Probably. Yes, you can. What do we get? 82. And 82 is 2 times 41. It doesn't have any nice square roots that can divide it any further. So this would be done, or you could write it as a decimal.
Do we have to put it in like this format?
If the question asks for an exact answer, you would have to write it as 2 root 82. If it asks for, give your answer to 2 decimal places or something like that, then you're allowed to use your calculator and write a decimal. Okay? What's the nice thing about an exact number is that it practices our square root unit, right? And then we're thinking about our square root unit, practicing that, getting ready. Did you notice I put up the exam schedule on the board here? January 30th and 31st is your math.
You got 2 days to do it, or?
Yeah, it's a 2-day, because it's longer than and it's only during class. So normally an exam took place, you sat down and wrote it over 2 to 3 hours, but you don't have any classes that are 2 to 3 hours long, and it happens during class. So it happens over 2 days.
It's like 2 1-hour.
It's like 2 1-hour tests.
And they're gonna be like a
It's everything.
they're gonna be like a study guide.
Yes. Yeah.
You get.
Since this is, for most of you, your first ever math exam, we will go
First ever
through a
exam.
thorough way to get ready for that. You're okay. During that time.
I need to slug
Or when? This
Can
then?
we play that?
Yeah, then we'll figure out either before or when.
Not just math exam first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are all the class exams on the same day?
No. Here, I'll pause the video here for a
Wait,
second.
it's not, is every single class gonna have an exam?
Have these next Sunday, like, okay, all of them are next Sunday.
So again, if you're wanting to use the formula, and using formulas, even if they're, long formulas like this one, are relatively easy, because all you have to do is know where the numbers are going. So again, we pick our first point, we call this our first x point, our first y point, our second x point, our second y point, and x2, and again, when I plug in negatives, I put them in brackets. -4 minus 2 squared plus 8 minus a -3 squared. Do your order of operations. So working with integers, really important that you've practiced this. -4 minus -2, or sorry, -4 minus 2, -6. 8 minus a -3, 11. What do you get when you do -6 squared? You get positive 36 or negative 36? Positive 36 plus 121 and you get the square root of 157. To do a quick check, can we simplify that one? Can't divide it by 9. Can't divide it by 25. Can't divide it by 16 or 4. Can divide it by 49. No. This one doesn't simplify. This would be the exact answer. If we wanted to round it, we could take the square root on our calculator of 157. And then that answer is no longer exact because you've rounded it.
It's okay if we just leave it though.
Yes. I like the exact answer, and as you take more pre-calculus classes, then more often you'll leave things as exact answers. If you're planning on taking applied classes, more often you'll go to the decimals. So I want you to draw that triangle, and if you are asked to find the perimeter, that would be the distance around all the points. So you'd have to use the distance formula 3 times to find 3 lengths. So I'm going to label my points in black, so 8, 0. -4, 1. And 3, to make it easier to see what I'm doing, I'm going to color code this line in blue, this line in green, and this line in purple.
Kinda looks like it's a right angle triangle.
Almost looks like a right angle triangle. I'm not sure if it is or not. So if we want to find the perimeter, does it make sense that you have to find out how long the green line is, how long the purple line is, and how long the blue line is? Okay? Which one do you want to find first?
Purple.
Purple. And since you've drawn a picture, you have an option here for the purple. What do you think would be easier for you? You would like to count? Would you like to make a triangle like this and just do a squared plus b squared equals c squared? Then that is perfect. If you want to use the formula, you would have to choose 1, maybe 3 and 6 to be x1, y1, and 8 and 0 to be x2, y2. But I agree, I like, if we count in this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is 6. And so c squared would equal 5 squared plus 6 squared. C squared would equal 25 and 36.
Ew. Exams means we're gonna have to do like trig and stuff again.
This is, oh, that's not, ooh.
Trig is like the best one.
True.
Trig is the easiest one.
Yeah, but what was the one we did? Oh, like
8, 9, 10, 11, 12 here,
The one
1 here.
really bad.
Okay, so something here, just mathematicians are fairly particular with stuff. So now I'm going to do the blue one, and you might be tempted to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared again, because that's the right formula, but you've already used up the letter c. So you want to use d for this one? Perfect. Oops, I'll do it in blue.
You have to use another letter.
Because you already said this side was C, and this side would have to be a different letter because it's a different length. So if I do the blue one, d squared would be 1 squared plus 12 squared. D squared would equal 145, so d is the square root of 145.
oh, you made a tiny.
I made a tiny little triangle with the 1 and the 12.
The bottom one.
Oh.
Count it.
I was so.
Dot it.
And then for E,
Did we use the two, like,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll use the letter E for the green one. And so E squared would equal 5 squared plus 7 squared. 25 plus 49.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, wouldn't it be 74?
Oh, did I add it wrong? Thank you. Good.
What is the longest unit?
The longest one?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're all very similar in length. Does it seem like there's lots of pages in this book?
Goes by
Because
so fast.
graphing pages, you go through so many pages at once because they take so much room.
What units do you have left? Yeah, what?
just the.
We have this one, and then one more.
Every unit.
What is it?
Do-do-do-do.
Is this a new unit?
This is a new unit. It's very similar to the last unit though. They're very connected.
What's our next
Next unit. Can't remember. Look at your course
We could just
outline
skip it.
because I can't.
polynomial? Are you gonna give us an
We already
outline
did
for
that.
the?
For the exam?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You get
If you
bonus
wanna
marks
see
if you finish that.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. What's the last unit?
So that would be what we've done right there. That would be the exact value. And I checked in each of those square roots. Doesn't simplify. But if we type it into our calculator, square root of 61 plus the square root of 145 plus the square root of 74
Good for you.
the perimeter would be 28.45. So when you're finding the distance between 2 points, you can either use your formula, or you can draw a triangle and do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. They're the same thing. I think if you've got a diagram already, usually the a squared plus b squared equals c squared is easier. If you don't have a graph drawn or haven't drawn it out, then the formula is often easier because you don't have to take the time to draw it out. So this one made sense to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared because we already drew out the picture. We have a circle with a center at 10, 4, and one of the points is at 3, -5. So this is a diagram just showing what's happening in the words in this question. The radius is the distance from the center to any point on the circle. And since we only have one point, I'm going to draw it there. Can you see that if you found the distance between those two, then you could figure out what the radius is. I think this one, because it's not on a grid, you're not counting spaces as easily. I would probably choose one of these points to be my first point, x1 and y1, and 1 to be my second point, x2 and y2. And it doesn't matter which is your first point and which is your second point. It will work out no matter which points you choose. The distance formula is nice that way. I can write out my distance formula from my formula sheet.
Do you have it memorized?
Yes.
You will?
And for those of you continuing on with pre-calculus in grade 12, unless they change it, in grade 12, you need to have all of your formulas memorized.
What?
I don't remember any of the ones.
Wait, they're not gonna like remind you or give you a sheet or anything?
They'll give you a sheet that's blank and say good luck. Yes, for the AP Calculus, you have to have all of your formulas memorized. But you'll notice that you know, like the formulas from grade 8 and grade 9. Do you have to write down a squared plus b squared equals c squared? Do you have to check your formula sheet for that one? Not anymore.
Wait, but
What about area of a rectangle? Would you need a formula sheet?
Yes.
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 Base times height.
Honestly.
An area of a triangle.
Divided by 2. Base times height divided by 2.
Good.
I know that.
You know area of a circle?
No.
Pi r squared.
Pi r squared. Good.
Okay, but that I thought it was 2 pi. But that was over like a few years, not 1 year.
So
Circumference is 2 pi.
one of the things you can do in preparation for that is when you get a new formula, even though it's on your formula sheet now, you can work at memorizing it early because you'll need them for later. So there's our distance formula. And if I plug things in, and the distance formula, if you think about, oh, this is just the, like, You're just figuring out this distance and this distance by doing x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1. If it makes sense, it's easier to remember.
Wouldn't 10 and 4 be y1 and or x1 and y1 because it's the first one they listed?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter which you pick as your first and which you pick as a second. And this is why. Look what happens when I do x2 minus x1. I get 10 minus 3. If you did it the other way, you would get 3 minus 10. One of them would give you plus 7. One of them would give you minus 7. And when you square it, the minus doesn't matter because it would go away. Y2 is 4 minus y1, which is negative 5. This one can be simplified. So there's our exact value with simplifying our square roots.
Round to one decimal.
It says, oh, 100, oh, I'm having adding issues today, aren't I? Doesn't add up to 140, it adds up to 130. And 130, unfortunately, does not simplify.
So it's
But this question, does it say
round up to one or
round to one decimal place? So we go to our calculator. And we square root 130, and we get 1124. Was there any units in this one? No.
So would that be exact or?
This is the exact one,
No.
The other one's a problem.
and this is an approximation because you're, yeah, I'm gonna give you a worksheet, I just gotta print it out.
Don't you have to do this legally?
Can I go watch?
Yes.
No, this one's pretty easy.